I stood at the departure gate, my suitcase in one hand, my boarding pass in the other. The excitement of the long-awaited family trip buzzed in the air, but inside I felt nothing but an eerie stillness. Something was off. I just didn't know what yet. My parents had planned this trip for months, insisting it was going to be a special getaway just for the adults, a way to reconnect as a family without the distractions of kids running around. As much as it pained me to leave my two little ones behind, I agreed. After all, they'd reassured me 100 times. Lily, you deserve a break. The kids will be fine with your friend. Just enjoy yourself for once, Mom had said, her voice firm but affectionate. So I had arranged everything, stocked the fridge, left detailed instructions, even video called my babies twice before heading to the airport. I was ready to embrace this rare opportunity to be Lily again, not just Mom. But then she walked in, my sister Claire, and right behind her, trailing in a chaotic line, were her 3 children. Kids I had been explicitly told wouldn't be part of this trip. My stomach tightened as I took in the sight, little backpacks swinging wildly, sticky fingers gripping snacks, tiny voices excitedly chattering. I turned to my parents, confused. Hadn't we agreed on adults only? Oh, Lily, don't look so surprised, Mom said, waving dismissively as if I was making a fuss over nothing. Dad chuckled beside her. It's different with Claire's kids. They're no trouble at all. No trouble? I stared at my sister's youngest, Max, who was already climbing onto an airport seat like it was a jungle gym, giggling as he tried to jump off. Claire must have noticed my expression because she let out a soft laugh. Relax, Lil. My kids are angels. You won't even notice they're here. That's when Mom said it, the words that sent an ice-cold shiver down my spine. We just love them more. At first, I thought I misheard. Surely she hadn't just said that. But then she smiled, her eyes twinkling like it was the most natural thing in the world, like it wasn't a knife to my chest. I let out a dry laugh, shaking my head. Excuse me? She sighed dramatically. Oh, don't be so sensitive, Lily. We just mean they're easier. They listen. They're more. She hesitated, then gestured vaguely, lovable. Lovable. I felt my face flush, a slow burning rage bubbling up beneath my skin. My mind flashed back to my children, my sweet, bright, beautiful babies who were at home right now, probably wondering why Mommy had to leave without them. Claire's kids weren't more lovable. They weren't more deserving. They were just the favorite grandchildren. And my kids weren't even worth a plane ticket. You lied to me, I said, my voice steady but only just. Dad let out a tired sigh. Lily, don't be dramatic. You know how hard Claire has it. Single mom, 3 kids, she needed this more than you. Needed it more? I looked at Claire, waiting for her to say something, anything, to acknowledge how messed up this was. But she just shrugged, completely unbothered, as if she had every right to be here with her children while mine were left behind. That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a miscommunication. This was a choice, a deliberate choice to prioritize Claire and her children over me and mine. A choice that they never even considered explaining or apologizing for. I clenched my jaw and took a slow breath. This was the moment I knew things would never be the same again. I had spent years making excuses for them, convincing myself that the favoritism was just in my head, that I was imagining things. But now it was undeniable. And I had a choice to make. Be the quiet, obedient daughter they expected me to be, or finally stand up for myself. I glanced at my boarding pass, then at my family, then back at my boarding pass. And suddenly I knew exactly what I had to do. They had made their choice. Now it was time for me to make mine. I stood there gripping my suitcase so tightly my knuckles turned white. The hum of the airport around me faded into a dull buzz as my parents and Claire continued chatting, completely oblivious to the storm raging inside me. Lily, don't be so dramatic, Mom sighed again, waving a dismissive hand. You're acting like we left your kids on the street. They're at home, perfectly safe. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. That's not the point, I said, my voice low and measured, but anyone who really knew me would have heard the sharp edge underneath. Dad shook his head, already exasperated, as if I was the one making things difficult. Lily, we just thought it would be easier this way. You're always so stressed with the kids. We figured you'd enjoy yourself more without them. I let out a hollow laugh, the kind that escapes when you're 1 second away from losing control. Oh, right. So you were doing me a favor, is that it? I glanced at Claire, who was flipping through her phone like she wasn't part of the conversation. And Claire? You figured she wouldn't mind bringing hers. Mom shifted uncomfortably, finally sensing that I wasn't just annoyed, I was furious. You know how hard things are for her, sweetie, she said, lowering her voice like she was talking to a child. 3 kids, no father around. She needed this more than you did. There it was again. That phrase. She needed this more than you. I could almost feel something inside me snap. You keep saying that. Do you even hear yourself? My voice was rising now, and people were starting to glance over, sensing the tension. I didn't care. What about me? What about what I need? Or does that not matter because I'm not your struggling, helpless daughter? Mom's eyes widened, and Dad's expression hardened. Lily, lower your voice. No! I stepped forward, my heart hammering. You lied to me. You looked me in the eyes and told me this trip was adults only. You knew I'd never leave my kids behind if I had the choice. You knew, and you didn't care. Claire finally looked up from her phone, rolling her eyes. God, Lily, just let it go. It's a vacation, not the end of the world. That was it. That was the final straw. I exhaled sharply, gripping the handle of my suitcase. I wasn't going on this trip. Not with them. Not anymore. Enjoy your vacation, I said, voice steady, controlled, deadly. I turned on my heel and started walking toward the exit. Mom gasped. Lily, don't be ridiculous. Where are you going? The flight is boarding soon. Not for me, I called over my shoulder. Lily. Dad's voice was sharper now, angrier. Don't you dare act like a child over this. That made me stop. Slowly, I turned around, meeting his gaze head-on. Act like a child? I repeated, my voice eerily calm. That's rich coming from the people who just told me straight to my face that they love my sister's kids more than mine. Mom paled, looking around nervously. Lily, honey, we didn't mean it like that. You meant it exactly like that, I cut her off. You've always meant it like that. I've just been too stupid to see it. The silence that followed was deafening. Claire, ever unbothered, sighed dramatically. Jesus, Lily, stop being so sensitive. My kids are here. What do you want Mom to do, kick them out? I laughed then, a real, bitter laugh. No, Claire, I don't want her to kick them out. I just wish for once in my life she thought I was just as important as you are. Mom opened her mouth to protest, but I didn't give her the chance. I turned and walked out of the airport, leaving them behind without another word. I barely remembered the drive back, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight I was surprised it didn't snap in half. I felt numb, like I was floating outside my own body, watching the scene replay over and over in my mind. I had spent years bending over backward for my family, letting things slide, making excuses, convincing myself that I was overthinking it. But they had just proven what I had feared all along. I was never going to be enough for them. Not as a daughter, not as a sister, not even as a mother. I thought about my babies sitting at home, waiting for me. Waiting for the grandparents who had never prioritized them the way they did Claire's kids. And suddenly I knew it had to be done. This wasn't just about the trip. This was about everything. Every holiday where my kids got smaller gifts than Claire's. Every birthday party where my parents fawned over her children and barely acknowledged mine. Every time I was made to feel like I was less. No more. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my mind was made up. I wasn't just walking away from the trip. I was walking away from them for good. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the house where my children were waiting for me. The warmth of home should have made me feel better, but all I could hear were my mother's words. We just love them more. That one sentence had shattered something inside me, something fragile I'd been trying to hold together for years. My parents had never said it out loud before, but they didn't have to. The favoritism had always been there, lingering just beneath the surface, like a wound that never quite healed. I had spent my whole life proving myself, trying to earn the same love and approval that Claire got effortlessly. And for what? For them to tell me to my face that my children didn't matter as much? I felt my chest tighten. No more. I was done. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. As soon as I opened the front door, two small figures came racing toward me. Mommy! My daughter Emily threw herself into my arms, her curls bouncing as she hugged me tightly. Behind her, my son Noah clung to my leg, his little hands squeezing my jeans. You're back already? My best friend Sarah peeked around the corner, confusion on her face. She had been watching my kids while I was supposed to be on my adults-only trip. What happened? She asked, concern lacing her voice. I set Emily down and forced a smile. I'll explain later. Sarah studied my face, then nodded. She knew me well enough to see that something had shifted, something deep. I turned back to my kids, running my fingers through Emily's curls. Did you two have fun? We missed you, Noah pouted, wrapping his arms around my waist. My heart clenched. They deserved better. They deserved grandparents who wanted them there, not ones who saw them as an inconvenience. I kissed the top of Noah's head, holding him close. I missed you too, baby. So much. That night, after I put the kids to bed, I sat at the kitchen table, my phone in front of me. My mother had called 4 times, my father twice. Claire? Not at all. No surprise there. I ignored the missed calls. Instead, I opened our family group chat, the same chat where my parents constantly gushed over Claire's kids, the same chat where I had spent years biting my tongue, smiling through the subtle jabs, pretending I didn't notice the imbalance. Not anymore. I started typing, I won't be coming on the trip, and I won't be part of this family anymore either. I hesitated for a second, then kept going. I've spent my entire life being treated like I was less, like my children were less. Today you made it clear that was never going to change. So I'm done. I hope you enjoy your vacation, but from now on, don't call me, don't text me, and don't expect anything from me ever again. I read it over, my pulse pounding in my ears. Then, without a second thought, I hit send. For a moment, I just stared at the screen. Then, one by one, I left every family group chat, blocking my parents' numbers before they had a chance to respond. It was done. I had cut the cord. The next morning, Sarah walked into my kitchen to find me making pancakes, the smell of butter and syrup filling the air. Okay, she said, crossing her arms. Spill. I flipped a pancake onto a plate. I'm done with them. Sarah blinked. Wait, with your parents? I nodded. Whoa. What happened? I told her everything. The lie, the betrayal, the favoritism that had finally been spoken out loud. By the time I finished, Sarah was gripping her coffee mug so tightly I thought it might shatter. Lily, she breathed. That's awful. I shrugged, trying to play it off. It's not surprising. That doesn't make it okay, she snapped. I met her eyes, my throat tightening. No, it doesn't. Sarah set her mug down. So what now? I exhaled. Now? Now I focus on my kids. On our life. I've spent too long chasing their approval. I don't need it anymore. Sarah studied me for a moment, then smiled. Good. Because you and your kids? You deserve better. Better. I nodded, my heart lighter than it had been in years. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for my parents to see me. Because I finally saw myself. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. At first, there was silence. A whole day passed without a single call or message from my parents or Claire. I knew they had seen my message. I imagined them sitting in their hotel suite, sipping cocktails, probably rolling their eyes at my dramatic behavior. But I also knew something they didn't. I wasn't bluffing. The second day, my phone started ringing. Mom. I watched it vibrate on the kitchen counter, my stomach tightening, but I didn't answer. An hour later, she tried again, then twice more that evening. Dad called next, then Claire, whose name I hadn't seen pop up on my screen in months. I ignored them all. By the third day, the messages started. Mom, Lily, sweetie, let's be reasonable. You're overreacting. We need to talk. Dad, Enough of this nonsense. Call your mother back. Claire, seriously, Lily? You're actually mad about this? Grow up. I stared at the messages, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Not a single apology. Not one admission that they had done anything wrong. They still thought I was just throwing a tantrum, like I was some child they could scold into submission. By the fourth day, the tone changed. Mom, Lily, this is ridiculous. We're family. You can't just cut us off. Dad, you're being selfish. Do you know how much we've done for you over the years? And then, the one that made me sit up straight. Mom, Lily, your father and I need help financially. We need to talk. I blinked at the screen, reading the message twice to make sure I hadn't imagined it. There it was, the real reason for the sudden concern. I had expected it to come eventually, but not this soon. They weren't worried about losing me. They were worried about losing my support. The realization, I had never seen it clearly before, but now it was blindingly obvious. For years, I had been bending over backward to keep my family happy. I had helped them financially more times than I could count, whether it was covering bills, lending money, or helping out when they overspent on something unnecessary. I never thought twice about it because, well, that's what family does, right? But looking back, I realized something. They had never once helped me. Not when I struggled as a new mother, not when I was going through my divorce, not when I was barely making ends meet. I had been on my own while they showered Claire with endless help, endless support, endless excuses. And now, when they realized I was serious about walking away, their first instinct wasn't to make things right. It was to guilt-trip me into coming back. Not because they missed me, because they needed something from me. That night, as I tucked my kids into bed, I felt something inside me settle. I was done feeling guilty. I picked up my phone, opening the text thread with my mother. I took a deep breath, then typed, "You're right, Mom. I can't just cut you off. I should have done it years ago." I hit send before I could overthink it. A few seconds later, my phone started ringing. Mom. I let it ring. I wasn't playing their game anymore. The next morning, I woke up to a flurry of messages. At first, more of the same. Lily, please, let's talk. This isn't how families treat each other. We raised you better than this. But when I didn't respond, the insults started. You're ungrateful. You're selfish. You'll regret this when we're gone. Then, the final blow. Dad, fine. If you want to act like you don't have a family, don't come crawling back when you realize you made a mistake. I stared at that message for a long time. A mistake? No. The mistake was thinking they ever cared about me the way I cared about them. I locked my phone, exhaled slowly, and turned my focus to the only people who mattered, my children. They were my family now. And that was more than enough. A week passed, then two. The calls stopped. The messages slowed. Eventually, the silence settled in, and with it came a strange sense of peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for their approval. I wasn't chasing their love. I wasn't bending myself into knots trying to be seen. I was just living. And yet, as much as I felt lighter, there was still a part of me that ached. Not for my parents, not for Claire, but for something else, or rather, someone else, my children's father. It had been 2 years since our divorce, 2 years since I had officially let go of a marriage that had been over long before I had the courage to end it. And looking back, I couldn't help but see the parallels between him and my parents. I had spent my entire life begging for love that should have been given freely. The man who wasn't there. Jason and I had met young. Too young. What started as a whirlwind romance turned into a marriage built on hopes, dreams, and nothing solid underneath. At first, I thought we were happy. I thought he was my partner, my equal, my rock. But over time, little cracks started to form. When I was pregnant with Emily, he started working late. When Noah was born, he barely looked up from his phone. When I needed him the most, he was never there. For years, I convinced myself it was normal, that marriage was hard, that it was just a phase. But deep down, I knew the truth. Jason didn't want to be a husband. He didn't want to be a father. And one day, he made that clear. "I just don't think I can do this anymore," he had said, standing in our kitchen, his voice cold and distant. I had been holding Noah in my arms, Emily clinging to my leg, their tiny faces oblivious to the moment their father decided to walk away. Do what? I had whispered, already knowing the answer. Any of it. And just like that, he was gone. No big fight, no dramatic affair. Just a man who never wanted the life he signed up for. Alone. But not really. At first, I had been terrified. How was I supposed to raise 2 kids on my own? How was I supposed to balance work, bills, exhaustion, and the crushing weight of being abandoned? But then I realized something. I had already been alone. Jason may have lived under the same roof, but he had never been there. He had never been a partner, never been the father our kids deserved. The only difference now was that I wasn't waiting for him anymore. And that was liberating. As I sat at the dinner table with my kids that evening, watching them giggle over a game they had made up, I thought about how much lighter life had become since cutting off my parents. I had spent years trying to get Jason to love me the way I needed. I had spent years trying to get my parents to see me, to treat me as equal. And in both cases, I had failed. Not because I wasn't good enough, but because they were never capable of giving me. That night, after I tucked Emily and Noah into bed, I saw my phone light up. Jason. I frowned. He rarely called. We only communicated through emails or short texts about the kids. Curious, I picked up. Lily. His voice was hesitant, unsure, guilty. Jason. I heard about everything. Your parents, the trip, Claire. I stiffened. How? He sighed. Your mom called me. She was trying to guilt me into talking to you. She said you've been acting out and making things hard for the family. I let out a sharp laugh, shaking my head. Of course. Even after I cut them off, they were still trying to control the narrative. And? I asked, bracing myself for whatever he was about to say. Jason hesitated. And I told her to leave me out of it. That it's none of my business. And that, he cleared his throat, that you're a good mom, and that they should be grateful you're even willing to talk to them at all. I blinked. I hadn't expected that. Jason had never defended me before. Not when we were married, not even when I cried, begging him to show up for our family. Wow, I said finally. That's unexpected. Yeah, he sighed. Look, Lily, I know I messed up. I know I was a shitty husband. But I do know one thing. You don't deserve the way they treat you. You never did. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Jason and I would never be friends. We would never be anything beyond co-parents. But hearing him say that, hearing him admit that he saw what I went through, it felt like closing a door I didn't even realize was still open. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, he let out a soft chuckle. Don't get used to it. The call ended, and I set my phone down, exhaling. I had spent so much time thinking about who wasn't there for me. But now I was ready to focus on the people who were. A month passed, then 2. The silence from my parents became permanent. No more calls, no more messages, no more desperate attempts to guilt me back into their lives. At first, it felt strange. I had spent my entire life orbiting around them, seeking approval, begging for scraps of love and attention. Now that pull was gone. But what surprised me most? I didn't miss them. One evening, as I was making dinner, Emily came into the kitchen, dragging her stuffed bunny behind her. Mommy, she asked, tilting her head, when are we going to Grandma and Grandpa's house again? I froze, my hands tightening around the wooden spoon I was stirring with. Noah, sitting at the kitchen table, perked up. Yeah, we haven't seen them in forever. I swallowed. How could I explain to my children, who were still too young to understand manipulation and favoritism, that their grandparents had never truly valued them? That they had only cared about my kids when it was convenient? I knelt down to their level, brushing a strand of hair from Emily's face. Sweetheart, I said gently, we're not going to see Grandma and Grandpa anymore. Her little face scrunched up. Why not? I hesitated. How much should I say? Because sometimes family doesn't treat us the way we deserve, I finally said. And when that happens, we have to make our own family. One that loves us the right way. Emily seemed to think about that for a moment, then nodded. Okay, she said simply, then grabbed her stuffed bunny and skipped away. Just like that. It was that easy for her. I wished it had been that easy for me. A few days later, just as I was settling in for the evening, there was a knock at my door. I frowned. No one ever just showed up at my house. I peeked through the window and felt my stomach drop. Claire. For a moment, I considered ignoring her. But a part of me, the part that was still learning how to let go, needed to know why she was here. I opened the door but didn't step aside. "What do you want, Claire?" She sighed dramatically. "Wow, no hello?" I crossed my arms. I wasn't playing her games anymore. "Fine," she muttered, shifting her weight. "I came to talk about Mom and Dad." I stiffened. "There's nothing to talk about." "Lily, come on." She gave me a tired look. "You've made your point, okay? You're mad. But it's been months. They're still your parents." I laughed, actually laughed. "No, Claire. They were my parents until they made it very clear that I didn't matter as much as you did." Claire rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. They love you." "Enough, Claire." My voice was calm but firm. "I'm not doing this. I see them for who they are now. I see you for who you are. And I don't need any of it in my life." Her lips parted slightly, like she hadn't expected me to stand my ground. "But no," I cut her off. "I'm done being second best. I'm done being the less important daughter. And I'm done pretending that I'm okay with it." Claire stared at me for a long moment, something flickering in her eyes, something almost like regret. But I didn't care anymore. "Goodbye, Claire." And this time, I was the one who shut the door. That night, I sat on the couch with Sarah, drinking tea while the kids played in the other room. "So, your sister showed up?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yep. Let me guess, she wanted you to forgive and forget so everything could go back to how it was?" I smirked. "Nailed it." Sarah took a sip of her tea. And I told her to leave." She grinned. "Damn right you did." I leaned back against the couch, exhaling deeply. For the first time in my life, I felt free. No more chasing, no more begging, no more waiting for a love that was never going to come. I had my kids. I had my friends. I had peace. And that was more than enough.